And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another bewildered and exasperated episode of the Assembly Call, as tonight your Indiana Hoosiers get absolutely demolished at home to Michigan in a game they desperately needed. The Hoosiers lose by 23 points on their home court after spotting Michigan a 17-0 lead to begin the game. The loss drops Indiana to 12-8. The Hoosiers have lost 6 straight. They are now 3-6 in conference play. And you'll have to forgive us. I apologize in advance if there are some speechless moments on this show, because it is really hard to explain what we all just watched. You know, we talked for 2 straight days about the desperation of the situation for Indiana, how much they needed this game, and how that might give them an edge because they would be the more desperate team. You know, and fans across the country were, trying to match that desperation, pulling out all the stops, every superstition they had. I put my candy stripe pants on that I haven't worn all year because we had to do something, my lucky pants. And I was so excited. And now I'm just a sad man in pajamas trying to make sense of what on earth happened in that game. Anyway, I'm your host, Jared Morris, here with Andy Bottoms. Ryan is off tonight. We're going to break it all down for you on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. We're going to start tonight as we start every show. That is with our Hoosier Proud banner moment. I can almost guarantee you this is going to be the only positive thing that we say from this game. And really all I've got is, really everything that happened after it was 17-0 doesn't really matter in a sense because the game was over at that point and Indiana was never able to, to battle back and really get it close. So to me, you've got to go back there for the banner moment. And I thought that there was one guy at that time that really tried to do something and give the team some energy and give the team a lift, and that was Al Durham. Now, he didn't do much the rest of the game, but at least in that, at that time when he got in there, Romeo was out with foul trouble. Al had a couple of nice drives, got to the free throw line. As Seth Tao tweeted out at one point at the under 8-minute timeout, as Indiana formed its huddle, Al Durham was the one high-fiving his teammates, trying to motivate everyone. His energy level compared to the rest of the team has been noticeable. And that's really where we are after a game like this, is that the one guy who showed a pulse at the beginning of the game and was trying to do something and was trying to communicate with his teammates and show some energy, that guy gets the banner moment because no one else did. And it just defies explanation. I don't understand it. We're going to spend an hour here trying to figure it out and trying to figure it out with you. But anyway, the banner moment goes to Al Durham for kind of being the one guy who seemed like he was ready to play. The irony, of course, is that he didn't start, so he had to come off the bench. And really, the game was almost over before he even got in there. So, my hat's off to Al for giving it a shot and really trying there early on. But unfortunately, he just didn't have many teammates there with him trying to do it too. All right, tonight's Hoosier Proud banner moment brought to you, as always, by our friends at Hoosier Proud and Home Field. At homefieldapparel.com, you will find the comfiest and most unique licensed IU apparel available anywhere. At HoosierProud.com, you will find great State of Indiana-themed apparel while sending 10% of your purchase to causes around Indiana like the Hoosier Veterans Assistance Foundation. Both brands were started by an IU grad, and all Hoosier Proud and Home Field apparel is designed and printed out of Indianapolis. And with Big Ten basketball in full swing, be sure to check out Home Field's IU Basketball Champions t-shirt featuring IU's 5 championship seasons, a feat that no other Big Ten school has accomplished. And of course, the Tri-Blend hoodie with the old IU Bison logo. It's as comfortable as a sweatshirt can be, and as Andy, or maybe it was Ryan that told us this, it's great if you need to cry tears into. It's great if for these losses when you're mad and you're angry and you'll get real sweaty and maybe you'll lose some weight too. So all kinds of reasons to get that sweatshirt in addition to the awesome logo and how comfortable it is.
Can a brother get some coupons?
Yes, don't forget to use the promo code ASSEMBLY at checkout for 15% off your order on either site. That's promo code ASSEMBLY at HoosierProud.com and HomeFieldApparel.com. All right, well, it is time to move the ball, find the open man, and get some opening thoughts from the rest of our team. That means the ball goes to Andy Bottoms. Andy, your Bottoms line on tonight's IU loss. We just talked for about 2 minutes before we went on air. Please be careful with your language because we are live.
Yes, definitely none of what I said before we got on. It would have just been one continuous beep with an occasional other word broken in just to break
with
things
an
up.
Occasional player name, I think.
Yeah, that seems about right. I don't really know where to start, as you said. The complete lack of urgency that the team started the game with was just dumbfounding to me, given the circumstances, given the context of this game, given where the game was, what was at stake, what they needed to do. It was just unbelievable to me the lack of focus on defense. Missing shots is one thing. We've seen this team do that for weeks. It feels like the complete, lack of intensity defensively is just, I can't understand where that comes from. And it was, again, we watched Justin Smith in the media availability yesterday talk about, well, what makes you guys flip the switch? Well, we're afraid we're going to lose the game. Well, it shouldn't at this point take falling behind after having fallen behind so many times to really turn things on. And you look across the way at Michigan, and Michigan is everything IU wishes it was right now. It's a team that has strong leadership from guys like Xavier Simpson and Charles Matthews. Who is the leader for IU's team? Who are these guys afraid to disappoint? Because I can tell you that Xavier Simpson looks like he would go up and punch somebody in the face on his team if they continuously didn't do what they were being asked to do. And there's no one afraid to let the other guy next to them down at this point. And you've got Isaiah Livers diving on the floor for balls up, 20 points in the first half. And IU has guys half going after the ball, and they might get to the ball first, but Livers is the guy who knocks it out of bounds. There's a play that Fitzner runs down, but he doesn't even secure the rebound. Livers knocks it out of bounds. And sure, IU still gets the ball, but it's a microcosm of the effort that is needed when teams are playing well versus when you see a team like IU right now. And it was just staggering to watch the difference between them. And even when IU made a run to begin the second half, Michigan again was what IU wished it could be. They made clutch threes. Brazdeikis hit a couple big ones to stem the tide on IU runs, and they made 4 free throws in a stretch where they hit 2 free throws, made 3, 2 free throws, made 3. Those are things that this team cannot do right now. And even when IU got in the bonus early in the second half, it didn't make anybody feel any better because they shot so poorly from the free throw line in the first half and really throughout the game. And I just do not understand at this point. I mean, if it doesn't change coming into this game, when does it change? And I just struggle to believe that at this point, again, I mean, kind of like I said before, this team is at a point where it's easy to say what you're doing wrong and to talk about it, but show people on the court that you are going to make the changes that are necessary. And it didn't happen. And it was, breakdowns by players. I thought some of the coaching decisions were head scratching in terms of, who was getting minutes and things like that, which I'm sure that we'll talk about, but it was just a complete and utter disaster from really beginning to end, with only one stretch in the middle that provided any glimmer of hope. And Michigan was more than willing to snuff that out immediately.
All right, now we'll go over to Ryan for Ryan's rant.
Everybody stinks and the world's awful.
All right, thank you, Ryan. Well said. That pretty much sums it up. Actually, we have a text from Ryan. He's not with us tonight. F everything. He spelled it out, but
that falls right into what I said before the show. So
that about sums it up. I said, Andy, when we got on here on the halftime report, I'm really glad I got the chance to do a halftime report tonight because I was able to get out some of my emotion. People who watched the halftime report, that was about, as animated as I'll get in a negative way on the halftime report. I feel like that was very cathartic. I shudder to think what I would be like right now if it weren't for being able to get that out.
Probably like I am right now, if I had to guess.
Probably. But, what I said on there is, tonight, these last couple of days was really, we're going to keep watching the games. We're going to stay here. We're, find ways to try to believe in this team. But this was really the last time that I think I'm going to be able to have faith that they'll come out and respond like we want them to. I really, really thought, and maybe this makes me an idiot, but I really, really thought they would come out and play with their hair on fire to start the game. I really did. And to get down 17-0, to basically have the worst start that you've had all season in the spot, I'm just not going to be able to believe in this team coming out ready to play anymore this season. I hope they do. I'll certainly get excited if they do, but I'm going to believe it when I see it, and I'm probably going to need to see it a lot because something on this team is broken. The confidence is broken. The chemistry is broken. You said, who are these guys afraid to disappoint? You know what I thought about earlier tonight? Do you remember back in the offseason, the video of the pool party at Archie's house? And Juwan Morgan was just like kind of taking control of everybody and pushing people around and telling people what to do. And we were like, this is one of the reasons this team will be good because they've got a dad. They've got Juwan out there who's going to kind of, keep everybody in line. And Juwan had good numbers tonight, But when the game was won or lost at the beginning, his defense was really poor. And he didn't seem to put up any kind of barrier to stop it from happening. Now, it's not all on him. Archie Miller didn't do it either. Why don't you take a timeout and try and, stop? You see it happening, it's 5-0, take a timeout, regroup the guys. Maybe do a full line change and let the guys sit for a minute and and chew them out on the sidelines and then get everybody back in. See if, no one did anything. And it was so frustrating to watch. And, I don't understand it. And again, there's a lot that we can talk about, but this game was lost within the first 5 or 6 minutes by not coming out and then not changing up anything to do anything different. I thought Indiana did try to do some different things offensively early, but we weren't tough enough to even get into it. Michigan was just, knocking us around and not letting us make the cuts, not letting us make passes. And, at some point, all the X's and O's, all that stuff, it doesn't make a bit of difference if you're not going to come out and fight for each other and play hard and do the things that you need to do. And right now this team just isn't doing that, and it's exasperating. I keep using that word, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, I think you saw at the beginning, Al, to me, I keep circling back to that, if for no other reason than that felt like the only positive part of the game.
It was.
But he was taking the shots that he wanted to take, not the shots that Michigan wanted him to take. And that sounds kind of dumb, but you talk about these guys wanting to really get out in transition and try to get easy baskets and really, play fast and play aggressive. He was the only one that did that. The turnovers that were made in the beginning, 4 of the first 7 possessions, you turn the ball over. You don't even get shots. It's one thing to miss shots, but some of the turnovers were just silly. And, 3 possessions in a row at one point, and then everything just snowballs, and it almost felt like it was over before it started. Missed easy shots, continuing to shoot poorly from 3-point range. Somebody, tweeted out the numbers, the last 4 games. It's just staggering how poor it is. But how many guys actually felt like that's the shot that they wanted to take? Finney is one of the only guys who made any, and he's maybe the only one who didn't hesitate to shoot. Shot off the catch on the one inbounds play. I think there was another play that he shot right off the catch in the second half, and it wasn't. It was off a pass from Romeo. It looked fluid, as if that was what they wanted to get, versus everybody seemed to, force shots that weren't there, force dribbles that weren't there, and it felt like any semblance of flow that they had by switching things up and doing a few different things offensively in the second half of the Northwestern game was out the window so quickly. But at the same time, even when you're not scoring, even when you've got to stop the other team. Michigan, in stretches during the game when they didn't score, IU completely failed to capitalize because they couldn't score themselves. So even the defense to offense argument that has been made didn't surface in this game whatsoever. And I agree with you about Juwan. If you want to, take up for him, it's that he's playing the entire game. He looked like he was about ready to die at the end of the first half because Romeo in foul trouble, for reasons, that are understandable. Archie didn't want to take him off the floor, but he wasn't helping anybody at a certain point when he was completely gassed. And the same thing really held true at points in the second half. And it seems strange to me what IU was trying to do on ball screens, because I guess because I couldn't figure it out. There were times they were switching. There were times only the big guys were switching. There were times that everybody was, switching. There was times that they tried to play their normal, coverage and hedge. But there was never consistent. So I don't know if that was just breakdowns or if they were telling them to try different things or to do different things.
Yeah, it's hard to know without knowing what the game plan was. We just know
there
it
was
it didn't work.
There was no consistency, and none of it really worked all that well. But it was strange to see the variation in that, because IU's been a team that's been pretty consistent in how they've defended those situations, and it seemed like maybe it was let's try anything because nothing can be worse than how it's going right now. It's tough to say.
I don't know. All right, let's go to the next segment. Let's regroup. Let's go to the next segment here. Coming up, as we continue our breakdown of Indiana's 23-point loss to Michigan, we'll talk about tonight's meaningful moments that you might have missed. Then we'll go inside the numbers to highlight the most important statistical notes from the game. You're listening to the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms. Ryan Phillips is off tonight. Lucky him. We are breaking down Indiana's 23-point loss to Michigan as the Hoosiers drop their 6th straight game. It's time now for tonight's meaningful moment that you might have missed. Andy, you kind of alluded to one that I really wanted to talk about, which is, and it's kind of a simple thing, but when I saw it, I was like, that's what that looks like. And it was I believe it was in the first half. Maybe the first half, or maybe it was, I don't know, in the second half, early in the second half. But an IU player was shooting a free throw, and you could see Xavier Simpson behind the player, and he's like barking out instructions and talking to guys and, kind of telling them what they're going to do, making sure that everybody's organized. And I thought to myself, I was like, whoa. It's like, I feel like we haven't seen that all season. Just someone kind of taking charge, telling guys what needs to happen, getting everybody organized and on the same page. And you want to know why a team is rudderless and why a team, at times seems like they can't stop a run or seems like they don't really know what's going on. You can't, no matter how good a coach is, and I don't mean that in a way to say that Archie coached a good game, because we're going to get to that. I don't think he did. But no matter how good your coaching is, you're not going to have the on-court chemistry you need without internal leadership. Michigan has it. This Indiana team absolutely does not have it. And that just stood out so starkly to me because we haven't seen it. It made me jealous that Michigan has a guy like that. I think the last time we had that was Yogi as a senior. And look, Yogi wasn't that guy at first. So I think there's hope for guys like Rob Finney and Al Durham, who I think can grow into that perhaps. I don't know them personally if they have that kind of personality. But to see that, that's what you need. And Indiana just doesn't have that right now. Juwan Morgan will lead with his play and his production, but at some of those key times when you've got to have someone step up, especially over this losing streak, he hasn't been able to do it. And he's really the guy that you look to for that, and it hasn't happened. So anyway, that just really stuck out because it just seems so different from what we've had this year.
Yeah, a couple other moments that stood out to me. I mean, every moment almost from the start was terrible, but there were a couple that stood out to me that just showed a lack of attention to detail or general awareness. One of them is Justin Smith loses his shoe under the basket, but Michigan has the ball. I think someone had just missed a shot. I don't recall exactly what had happened, but he was responsible for the guy who was right underneath the basket. And he picks up his shoe and starts trying to put it on during the play. In the meantime, his guy gets the ball. He recovers in time to make him miss, but eventually fouls, and what was maybe not a great foul call. But who gives a crap about your shoe at that point? Play defense. You have a guy that was really close to swearing. I just want you to know that I showed great restraint in not doing that. And
I'm also marking that, and that will come back to haunt you later.
Of course it will, as you should.
We got to get something out of this post-game show.
As you should. Then, he makes a foul on a Juwan Morgan missed free throw on a rebound that he had no chance of getting. You just pick up a ridiculous foul. And in a game when Archie seemed hell-bent on playing only 6 guys for the majority of the game, you can't pick up silly fouls like that. And then the other was the IU shooting, or Michigan is shooting a 1-and-1. Livers misses it, almost grabs his own rebound off the 1-and-1 because most of the guys on the floor have no idea that it's a 1-and-1, and no one really reacts to him missing the shot. Those things, there are, again, as you said, there are coaching things that we can discuss for sure about this game. Those are not coaching. That is a complete lack of attention to detail and a complete lack of focus on what is actually going on around you.
I also thought, look, this is kind of an Indiana team. They're a bit of a front-running team in some senses that, like, when things are going good, they're okay. But as soon as, they'll get going on a little run and another team will put up some resistance, especially over these last, 6 games, and Indiana kind of wilts in the face of it. And I thought really, the other stretch of good play for Indiana was the start of the second half. They came out, I think they scored on their first 4 possessions. They looked really aggressive offensively. Romeo scored, Justin Smith scored, Juwan got a couple of buckets down low. And they started to cut into the lead. I think they got it down to 11 at one point. They might have gotten it down to 9. But what happened every time? Brzdakis hit a 3. Brzdakis hit another 3. Charles Matthews went on a 7-point run. And really, the first half could have been a lot worse if Michigan was making some open shots that they had. But they shot poorly from three-point range. I think they were 3 of 12 or something like that in the first half. It could have been worse. Those 3-pointers started going down in the second half. And, I thought there was a chance for like 6 seconds. I thought there was a chance. The crowd's getting into it. I think Finney made a 3 to cut it to 9. And it's like, holy crap, we might actually come back and make this a game. And then, boom, door closed, and we never threatened again. And that was a sign of the maturity that Michigan has, and a sign of just how balanced they are offensively. That they just got guys who can, Brzdakis can, he was terrific tonight. Charles Matthews had that great stretch, and that, Indiana had never gotten close enough to really make it a game again, but that stretch by Michigan ended any hopes Indiana had of coming back and even making it competitive at all. And then from there, Indiana just wilted and just absolutely, I don't want to say they stopped playing because they were still out there running up and down the court, but they certainly stopped executing. They stopped playing with the purpose that they had at the start of that second half. And, I tell you what really got to me, Andy, was at the end of the game. I think there was like maybe 2.5 minutes left. It was 62-44, I think, and Michigan scores 4 straight points, and we're just kind of going through the motions. The game's over at that point, but we're just kind of jacking up shots, not really getting back on defense. I would have loved to see, like, right at that moment, let's just put all the bench guys in. Like, don't allow the bad habit of going through the motions to even be allowed to take hold for that minute. Put Clifton in, put the other guys in, and give them a chance to at least run hard up and down the court. I think Archie did it, the final minute of the game, but it just it was very frustrating to watch.
Those 2 possessions, Xavier Simpson basically dribbled the ball for 25 seconds and then made a straight line drive from half court all the way to the basket for a layup twice in a row. One of which there's already a clip circulating of Romeo. I have no idea what exactly he was doing on defense. I think he thought a screen was coming, but it was not great, and certainly it wasn't a great defensive performance by a number of players. But yeah, to just be out there and watch a guy dribble the ball for 25 seconds, know that all he's going to do is go to the basket and fling it up, and you still are, unable to stop it. It was rough. That stretch you talked about though was a really big one. That was one I had circled as well. Rob makes that 3. My daughter calls to my wife. They've got it to 9, and basically the words were barely out of her mouth before Brzdakis hit the 3, and Michigan scores 10 points over the next 4 possessions, and it's ball game at that point.
Oh, the childlike belief, the innocence, the
for that
naivete.
moment. Because when you said 6 seconds, that was about right.
Oh, that poor girl. I hope you gave her a big hug after having to watch this. Actually, I hope she gave you a big hug.
I sent her to a different room to watch something else. I think it was unnecessary. No, she's toughed it out and watched the rest of it. Although I think they were starting to do something else by the end of the game, and I certainly wish that I was doing something else by the end of the game.
All right. What numbers matter? I don't want to belabor this, but if there are, obviously Indiana going 3 of 20 from downtown, doesn't really change. But, for a team that does seem to take its energy and enthusiasm from good things happening offensively, if they could have knocked down some of those, Fitzner had a couple looks at it. Finney took 6 of them. Romeo couldn't make any of his. If maybe some more of those go down, you get some more energy. That obviously would have been helpful. Indiana did get 11 offensive rebounds, but the Hoosiers, 27.6% from the field tonight, 55% from the free throw line. 4 assists on 16 made baskets, 0.73 points per possession. The offensive numbers tonight there's atrocious, and then there's like 10 piles of nothing, and then there's what our offensive stats were. Michigan, they scored 1.03 points per possession, and as inconsistent and lackluster at times as the defense was, you'll take that. If you're going to hold them to 1.03 points per possession, that's a winning defensive effort if you can get something going offensively. Indiana just couldn't at all.
Yeah, guys outside of Juwan were 10 of 46 from the floor, if I'm doing the quick math correctly. The three-point shooting was poor. The free throw shooting was poor, 11 of 20 over the course of the game. That's not the difference in a 23-point loss, but certainly another area where IU wants to be aggressive, wants to get to the line, and then you get there and you can't make shots. 4 assists over the course of the game is not good. Admittedly, part of that is you didn't make shots, so you have to have made shots to get an assist. We had 1 in the first half. 9 turnovers is not terrible, but some of the shots were the equivalent of turnovers. And points in the paint, I think IU rebounded in that area a little bit in the second half because that ended up tied at 24. I'm pretty sure that was lopsided in Michigan's favor in the first half, but continues to be making shots. The defense was terrible in a couple key stretches. The beginning of the game was one, that stretch we just talked about in the second half when IU started to make a run that they gave up 13 points over the course of 6 possessions in that stretch where you're trying to get your way back into the game. IU opened and scored on the first 5 possessions, but you're not making up ground because you're not able to string together enough stops. And really from there, Michigan rarely scored on consecutive possessions. They just scored on consecutive possessions one other time over the rest of the game. But the offense was just so bad. And to your point, some of the defense you get credit a little bit defensively for teams just missing open shots. And I saw the same thing that you did in the first half, but the offense continues to be really stagnant. And there are times when guys are just forcing shots. There are times when not really shooting shots within rhythm. It was just that side of the ball or that side of the floor is just a complete disaster at this point. And again, you had 5 guys who scored all but 2 of your points, which is pretty much the same as it was against Northwestern. It was just those 5 guys scored more points than they did tonight. But other than 1 bucket from Fitzner, Al's points did come off the bench. So he had 8 bench points, but he played 6 guys the majority of the game. 5 of those did the majority of your scoring, which is not saying a great deal. And that's what you end up with. It was just a really, really poor offensive performance, to say the least.
John wants to know where your Christmas vacation quote is. You've set a standard. So think about that.
I'll work on that over the rest. That'll give me something positive to think about. Maybe I'm just gonna step aside for a little bit, Jerod, watch a little bit of the movie, and you can continue on from here.
Take myself.
I'll circle back up with you when I found something good, and we'll go from there.
You know what? I'm glad you said that, because the point that I wanted to make next is I thought in the second half, as soon as things kind of started to go bad after, Indiana kind of had a nice start offensively, I thought Romeo and Juwan started playing, kind of doing too much one-on-one stuff. And look, it is a fine line because, Ryan's been on here and criticized them for when things are down, they're not asserting themselves enough and they're not doing enough. So it's like, okay, so what is Romeo supposed to do? Just go get the ball and drive every single time? Well, yes, but no, you still want to get it through the offense and you want to try and set up your teammates. And in fact, he did do that once. He got, Rob Finney a 3-pointer, which was nice. But it's almost like, they made all those threes, they pushed it back out to 15-16, and we panicked. And when that happens, Al doesn't really get involved in the offense. Justin did a little bit. He had that stretch where he hit a 3 and then he drove to the basket, a quick little 5-point stretch. But, Al, I thought Romeo and Juwan pressed a little bit and tried to do too much on their own. Like I said, I understand it's a fine line because they need to assert themselves, and that is probably more a function of just the complete lack of cohesion and confidence and trust in the offense, where you're just like, screw it, I got to go find a way to get a bucket. And in a certain respect, that's admirable. In another respect, it's not. And to me, that goes probably – it's on them some, but I think it also goes higher than them. To Archie and trying to figure something out. And I'm not saying that there are any magical elixirs offensively when you're 3 of 20 from downtown, you can't shoot and you're so limited with what you can do offensively. I'm not saying that there are any easy answers, but I did think that when it devolved into that, Indiana just had absolutely no chance offensively. It's not pretty to watch. It doesn't produce results. And you look at Juwan's line, 16 points, 12 rebounds, 4 blocks, 2 steals. I mean, from a statistical perspective, it's going to look okay. But as we said, the defense and the timeliness of his production just wasn't really where it needed to be. So any other numbers that you want to get into?
No, certainly not. To piggyback on what you said, though, I felt the same thing watching the game when you saw, and I've been trying to do this these last few games and track at least how possessions end. It definitely felt like for a while that Romeo was trying to make up for all the time that he missed in the first half by really forcing some step backs and shots that just are not ones that needed to be taken at the moments that they were taken. And to your point, yes, that's kind of admirable, I guess. But when other guys are at least frequently involved in the possessions and what's going on, it feels like what little flow this team can get into offensively, it's better at those points, because otherwise it just turns into, we've talked about this before, when, it can't devolve into three guys standing around and really trying to watch them do some things. And I think you started to see that a little bit in key stretches. I'm not saying that's a difference in the game. The game was lost by the way this team came out early, but it does make a difference when, and it's a difficult balance to strike when two guys are responsible for so much of the production, where how do you skew it enough to give those guys the shots, but keep other guys engaged in the game, essentially. And I thought that was a struggle in the second half. Even at the beginning of the first half, when the offense was playing well, it was a little bit of balance. Romeo scored inside, Juwan scored, Justin had that layup, Juwan scored, Rob hit a three. And that's 4 of the 5 guys in the first 5 possessions have scored. And then there's a lot of, Juwan and Romeo finishing possessions from there on out. And I think it gets other guys, even in the first half, when, I was saying, get Al some touches, which seems like a really, if anybody thought we'd get to that point in the season, that would have been surprising, but it seemed like he needed the ball more because he was the guy that was being aggressive and really trying to get the ball to the basket. And I thought,
and that was with Romeo.
And that was when that was one of the only things that was working. They even got away from that.
Yeah.
So there's no other numbers that really need to be hit, at least that I looked at. But
no, and Al has done better when. I don't know if the Northwestern game, if it was in Romeo out, but when either Romeo or Juwan is out, he gets lost a lot when both of them are in there and kind of struggles to get involved. But you see when those guys are out, he gets a little bit more aggressive. So does Rob Finney. And so, look, I like both of those guys. I think those guys are going to win a lot of games in the Big Ten. And I think, they may need to take a little bit more control and be more assertive themselves. And getting back to the Romeo point, the last thing I want to say on that is, it's like anything. Everybody shares in the responsibility. But I have a hard time pinning a lot of that responsibility on Romeo for this reason. He's a freshman. And he just spent 4 years in high school being the guy that when you needed a bucket would go get it and could probably go get it most of the times, as his high school resume showed. So when he starts getting like that, and when times get tough, we all fall back on our instincts. That's what we do. So what he needs is a team leader or a coach to kind of reel him back in and either relax him or discipline him, not discipline him, but, kind of show him a better way than that. This probably worked in high school, but we've got to do it this way. And it doesn't feel like he's really getting that. It doesn't feel like there's, someone on the team necessarily that he respects in those situations. And it doesn't, at least from what, we don't know what's said in film sessions. We don't know what's said in the huddles, any of those things. But it feels like something where, he's got to be shown a different way or forced into doing it a different way when he gets like that, because he's just reverting back to what he's used to. And eventually he'll learn, but he's still a freshman in the middle of his first season. So I have a hard time getting too upset with him for doing what has always worked for him on the basketball court.
It's funny, just to circle back to Rob and Al getting more shots. We're talking about these guys like they had great games. They were combined 3 of 19 from the floor. So
yeah. I know.
I don't know what that says. Nobody. I mean, you can't point to anybody who shot the ball well. So I can't really give us too hard of a time about that. But I did think that Al really showed just some toughness in the first part. But it's hard to
again. The game was over when it was 17. Yeah. The game was over by that point.
We should have done something different here, but yeah, it's funny that we talked about those guys need to get more shots. I mean, 19 shots between the two of those guys is quite a bit, but who knows? All right, let's move on to something else.
Let's move on. All right. Coming up on the Assembly Call, we continue our breakdown of Indiana's 69-46 loss to Michigan tonight at Simon Scott Assembly Hall. We'll talk about the rest of the storylines next here on the Assembly Call. Stick with us. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Catch us live immediately following every IU basketball game, plus every Thursday night at our website, assemblycall.com. And while you're there, make sure you sign up for our free IU Hoops email newsletter. Over 6,000 of your fellow IU Hoops fans are subscribed. You'll get our weekly Six Banner Sunday news roundup as well as our post-game analysis emails. It'll make you a smarter and more well-informed IU basketball fan. I'm Jerod Morris. I'm here with Andy Bottoms. We're breaking down Indiana's gigantic, devastating loss to Michigan. So, Andy, I want to point out one coaching move that was interesting and to a certain extent I liked, and one that I'm totally exasperated by. In the first half, there was a stretch.
This would be fun if I could guess what they were, but I'm going to let you go ahead.
Well, I don't even know if this was a good move, but it at least showed Archie kind of trying something else, and he was somewhat forced into it simply because Romeo was out. But we played a stretch out there. Let me get the exact lineup. It was, okay, well, I can remember it off the top. Oh, yeah. It was Demezy, Evan Fitzner, Al Durham, Rob Finnessy, and Juwan Morgan. I believe that was the five that was out there, which essentially, what Archie was doing was he was sacrificing defense because Michigan kept putting, Evan Fitzner into ball screens and getting switches, and they would just drive him to the basket. But Archie was basically saying, hey, let's give offensive spacing a try. Let's put some three-point shooters out there and see what happens. Now, Demezy didn't make any threes. Evan didn't make any threes. It didn't work. I at least appreciated the fact that we kind of tried something different and tried to see what we could do with a little more spacing. Unfortunately, again, the guys just weren't really able to take advantage of it too much, and it kind of shows some of the limitations that Archie has when he goes to the bench. The other one that I didn't understand at all, I have to think that there is some sort of reasonable explanation for it. I don't understand why Clifton Moore didn't play tonight. 2 minutes into the game, I was thinking, put Clifton in there. At least he'll go run around and hustle. He'll go sprint his way into an offensive rebound or something, even though he'll probably give up something in a ball screen action. But for him to not play at all, I've got to think that he had a bad week of practice or something, because he's been a little bit better the last few times he's been out there, and this seemed like a game that screamed for him to play with all the minutes Juwan had to play. The lackluster effort. If you're searching for answers on the bench, he's been one of the few guys that has given you some positive answers the last few games. So, I would love to ask Archie that. I don't want to say that I know why it didn't happen. I just know from the information that I have, it doesn't make any sense to me at all.
I would have been 1 for 2 guessing what you would have went for. I thought you were going to say about bringing Romeo back in with 2 fouls in the first half was because I know you've talked about that before.
Yeah, I like that.
Not being afraid to do that. And Michigan, to their credit, immediately
you get burned for it sometimes.
Went right after him and put him in a position to get called for a foul. So good on them. I didn't remember that line. I do feel like I remembered remarking out loud about that lineup. I'm like, this is a weird group, but you kind of see it from that standpoint. And Demezy took a couple threes, one of which was, I don't really understand what the rationale was behind it. And Fitzner keeps taking shots, and
they need to.
They just
all those shots
down.
Were defensible. We just didn't make any of them.
Yeah, he's going to give them those shots. Yeah, the move that he made that was rough was the one where Juwan ends up getting called for the offensive foul because Fitzner's trying to drive somebody from the top of the key. That's just not what probably he needs to be doing at that point. But at some point offensively, when nothing is working, you have to try something different. So I suppose I can appreciate a little bit of that. And you didn't have the guys that teams have really made a point to leave open out there in Justin and Zach from the perimeter. So now flipping to the Clifton Moore thing, I truly don't understand. How bad could his there's only been 2 days of practice since the last game. How bad could Wednesday and Thursday have been for him to do that? And I thought he, even in the Northwestern game, gave some good minutes. And the funny thing is I referenced that Jordan Sperber video before. He actually showed some plays where Clifton Moore was doing exactly what they wanted to do against ball screens defensively, and was really sticking to the guy setting the pick, and did a really good job of that for all the things that he's gotten burned by defensively. This is not a commentary that is to suggest that he is a terrific defender, but you did see in those clips that he was doing what they wanted to do. And in a game when Juwan looked like at times he was having to carry a piano on his back up and down the floor, how can you not try to steal 2 minutes at a time? It's not a thing that Clifton has to go and play 6 or 8 minutes in a row in order to kind of meet what we're even suggesting here. Give Juwan a break. let Clifton get experience. And if he gets burned, is he really any worse than what anybody else is doing at that
Not
point?
tonight.
That was really what I eventually got to. It felt impossible that any option on the bench could have been worse than what was happening defensively over the first 5 minutes of the game.
Yeah, and I get, Coach is saying in the chat, Michigan plays pick and pop centers. Moore has difficulty defending the pick and pop. Yes, I understand that. But Juwan struggled in ball screens all night. Evan Fitzner got taken to the hole all night, and Fitzner's not making a shot. So, all we're saying is, it's crazy, that we're, sitting here spending an entire segment arguing for him to get in. It wouldn't have changed the game, but it does show that he has improved and has kind of shown us something the last few times he's played. And again, above all that other stuff, above all the, he struggles in the pick and rolls and all that stuff, the one thing Clifton does when he gets out there 95% of the time is he busts his butt. He's going to make mistakes, but he's going to hustle doing them. It's usually a mistake of awareness, not a mistake of he's just kind of being lackadaisical. And we're seeing too many of those kinds of mistakes. So there would have to be a really good explanation for that to make sense to me. I didn't get it. I'm the caveats we always have to say. We're not in the locker room. We don't know the players. All of those things. And so I'm always loath to say well, a coach should have benched everybody. He should have done this, that, or the other. The coach is out there trying to win games as much as possible. And Archie has a lot of experience doing this. He knows, what's going to be able to reach these players theoretically. But, at some point, I'm starting to come around on the ideas that people are talking about, where maybe you've got to hold these guys more accountable, even if the guys that you're bringing in off the bench aren't, if it is a huge drop-off, maybe at some point you've got to sacrifice a half, or you've got to sacrifice something to send a message. Maybe he just doesn't believe in that. Maybe he doesn't think that would work. Maybe there's other things going on. I don't know. But, man, it was, to me, I found myself wanting that tonight, watching the game, just because for whatever reason there was such a malaise. And it felt like if we could do something to bust out of that malaise, maybe we could get going, and we didn't. And it just, before we knew it, we'd been steamrolled.
I would agree with you. I think, again, we go back to Al. We're speaking glowingly about a guy who went 1 for 7 from the floor because his aggressiveness stood out because everybody else was so passive.
And he was talking.
That's That's what's bad. It doesn't mean that you have to play well necessarily or, score a bunch of points. I mean, he stood out because he was playing aggressively far more so than anybody else on the floor. And what was lacking at the beginning of the game seemed to be intensity, effort, all of those kinds of things that even if in a short spurt of time you could get from Clifton Moore with good. I just don't. The things that were lacking to begin the game are, to me, things that he could have brought to the table, albeit over a short stretch. And Michigan did a fantastic job of identifying mismatches and going after them. As you said, when Fitzner was in the game, they put him in pick and roll situations and forced him to defend guys and try to stop drives to the basket. When Romeo came back in with 2 fouls, they went right after him. So to their credit, if there was blood in the water, they were going to figure it out. But I struggle to think that with what seemed to be a complete lack of energy, a guy who, if nothing else, when he's been on the floor in short spurts, has brought energy. Again, I go back to it couldn't be worse than what was happening at the time on the floor.
Apologies to the Jake Forrester fan club. We don't mean to leave Jake out. As Coach said in the chat, I would play Jake over Clifton any day. That's fine. I would have put them both in. And again, you're going to deal with mistakes, and those guys are not immune from bad possessions. They're not like the pinnacles of effort and toughness, but they're different, and they've at least shown some fight when they've gotten in for their minutes. So that's, It would not have changed the game. It wouldn't have changed anything. Do you send a message that maybe helps for the future? I don't have any clue. We are grasping for straws, absolutely, at this point. But, man, it just seemed like, if not now, when? And I mean, Archie had some fire. He was certainly getting upset at the officials, and you could just see the frustration was oozing off of his face. And I think he's in a really difficult spot, with all the things that we've talked about all year, with the injuries and with, everything that has happened, and with not having his players and with not having guys who can shoot and all of these things. that's all baked into it. But I still think there's, maybe there are some other buttons, some other things that could be pushed to try and get this team to just the baseline level of like, we're going to go out there and fight. And maybe there isn't, because it's at some point that goes back to the players. I wonder if there aren't some things that maybe he could do, but it probably would just be a short-term bump if the players deep down inside individually and together can't rally themselves together and be like, we're better than this. We've got to have more pride than this. We can't go out like this. This is embarrassing. And I think the reason why IU fans are so frustrated, we'd all be frustrated with, offensive struggles and bad shooting, and that's going to frustrate us. But the disappointment is from the lack of fight. I know someone, I think it was Josh Skillman, who mentioned the one of those early Crean teams that was terrible, but at least you kind of felt like they were fighting. The 2009 team that they played, it was a much different Michigan team. That Michigan team was, mid-40s in KenPom. But when they played them at home, they lost in overtime. And obviously this is an elite Michigan team, and they buried us. And this was, the talent level difference is night and day. But this team just doesn't have the togetherness right now in the fight. And I've probably said that 6 times. And so it's time for us to move on to something else. How much more time do we have in this segment? All right, so let's pick up counting down the seconds.
Now you're just playing out the string. This is sad.
No, we're not. I want to stay aware because I want to make sure that we stay on the right time. We are going to fight to the end in the show.
I got you.
We are not going to quit.
I got you.
Who do you want to talk about?
Well, so just to give a couple press conference quotes, I'm just kind of looking through the feed here. Juwan mentioned some of what you said. I would say it's embarrassing in my mind. I don't think any team is 23 points better than us. I think we have more fight in us than that. I'm angry about it. I know every guy in the room is. I saw the looks on their faces. We have each other's backs. We need to show that.
It sounds like the kind of stuff we heard in 2017, honestly.
Yeah. And some of Archie's comments said, really guys lacking confidence right now. An entire group that doesn't have confidence, not one guy, it's the entire team. Asked if toughness comes from players or him, probably both. Didn't seem dissatisfied. It's good that our team is still engaged practice-wise, but the game disappointment is a product of our toughness level. We're feeling sorry for ourselves a bit. All checks out, but it's kind of it gets back to it's the same stuff that's been said after so many of these games. I don't know what about this changes it. What about this is that much more embarrassing than losing by 15 at home to Nebraska? What about this is more embarrassing than losing on the road against Northwestern? What about this is more embarrassing than the other things that have happened? I just struggle to believe that somehow this is the breaking point if you haven't reached the breaking point already. And that part I struggle with. Otherwise, what we need to talk about, I don't know if there was other player stuff that's really worth hitting. Zach,
I've got one other quote from at IUBB guy. It says Archie just left the podium, said his team is soft, pointed out they lack confidence, need to put in more work. Watching that left me no doubt this is the man I want running the program. Guys just need to respond. And look, like we have pinballed blame everywhere because tonight was a total system failure, so everybody's responsible. But and we've again tried to pick out these moments. Archie could have done this, Archie could have done that, bench them, take them out, do all these things, and I think that's all valid. But as I said, at the end of the day, they're probably short-term fixes if there isn't a level of internal leadership, intestinal fortitude, something deep inside that says, to hell with this, I'm not going out like this. And that's what we don't see. So all the talk is awesome. Those are the right words to say after a loss like this. But when you see it over and over again, it just becomes cheap talk. And I can tell why Archie is not – he's certainly not coaching this. We know that. You can argue if he's doing enough to stop it, but at the end of the day, the majority of the blame for that has to go to the guys wearing the jerseys to step up and take more pride in what they're doing. I believe that. You might disagree, but that's what I believe on that. And it's the coach's job to put in a system that they believe in, that gives them confidence, that they trust, and to put guys in the right position. Those things aren't happening either. But when it comes to that fight and the grit and the toughness and all of that stuff, at some point that's got to come down to you as an individual, you as a person.
Yeah, I would agree. It's on him to make adjustments to try to figure out how to get the confidence back. you mentioned, they're a shell of what they were before, and that's certainly true if you watch them. How do you get them back? How do you get that confidence and find a way to get them to a win, and maybe things start to snowball the other way? It's hard to figure out because everything was so poor to really say it's this or it's that. I do struggle with not trying to do something different from a rotation standpoint to really play those 6 guys for so long. I don't think anybody subbed in for the first. Yeah, I think it was those guys really threw. I don't want to say the under 8 timeout in the second half. I tweeted out. I have to go back and look, but I mean that's a long time to play with 6 guys in a game when those 6 guys aren't really playing that well, and to not try something else. And like Roberts had another game, he didn't take a shot. Just to play 23 minutes and not take a shot, he has to be looking for that in a game when guys are really not looking to guard him and do that. But again, you go back to, you want to have a quick trigger and take guys out and send a message, and then you look down the bench and it's who you're going to put in. But it feels like you got to try something. I think while it's fair to say a lot of the things that you said, I do think there's a little bit of what buttons can be pushed that haven't been pushed already by him, and how do you figure some other way to do it.
Call a timeout when your team gets down 7-0 2 minutes into a game.
I think it was that was what I thought.
Jesus.
It was for a team that has made a habit of that. It's almost at 5-0 you call it. Then certainly when it got to 8, that felt like the time to light somebody up at that point and
stare at them all as they walk off. Like, really we're going to do this again? No, the hell we are.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to, again, you look at some of these guys getting to wake up. Like, where's the leadership on the court? There was another clip that went around. I think it was, I want to say it was last weekend. Doesn't matter. It was Kentucky. Freshman point guard goes up to one of the other guys within the first minute of the game and basically says, "Wake the F up." Like, where is the person who is not going to allow another slow start? This has been almost every game. And again, it just goes back to somebody saying, "Hey, I'm not going to," actually showing I'm not going to, they're saying, "I'm not going to do this and we're not going to take this." And again, not to go back to Al again, that's why it stood out. He seemed to be the only guy who was like, I'm not just going to sit idly by while we get smacked in the face on our home court again. I'm going to at least be aggressive and go down swinging.
And the timing worked because he was on the court without Romeo too, which is when he seems to be a little bit more aggressive. So, Okay. All right, well, coming up here in our final segment, we're going to hand out a game ball. You can guess who's going to get that. We'll hit any other storylines that we haven't hit yet. Try to look at the big picture, too, and then we'll do last call, deliver our final thoughts on another Indiana loss. That's next. Stick with us here on the Assembly Call. You're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. I'm Jerod Morris here with Andy Bottoms as we are going through a cathartic episode of the Assembly Call, I think. Like, Andy, I feel like at the end of this, we'll feel better for having gone through this experience, release some tension, release some frustration.
I mean, we'll be done talking about it, so that seems good.
Yeah, be able to move on. Again, it's the greatest benefit that we get out of doing this show is when there's great wins, we get to extend the joy and enjoy it together. When there's bad losses, we can come on here, get it all out, and then, go on and
the whole weekend is ahead of us.
Try and fall asleep.
Yeah, the whole weekend is ahead of us at this point.
Yeah. All right, Andy. Some people have asked on really bad performances, why do you guys hand out a game ball? I'm not sure I have a great response for that. We do in our community, which you can check out assemblycall.com/community. We do have a season-long game ball picking contest, and the game ball that we award here is the official one that goes for that contest. So that's why we force ourselves to do it on games like tonight, even though, the shot clock operator maybe deserves the game ball. That's kind of how bad the performance on the court was. I mean,
definitely not, I don't think.
Because, and here's why I say that to that person. At least like if we were going to get down 17-0, let's at least delay that as long as possible. So props for that. And my wife got home late, so I needed like a 5 or 6 minute delay to be able to watch all the game, and that happened. So I want to give the shot clock, the broken shot clock, my game ball.
I mean, if you missed the first 5 minutes of the game, you really wouldn't have missed anything.
I know, but I have to come on here and talk about it. I would have missed the entire game because that's where the game was lost. So
perhaps. One could also argue maybe the shot clock operator could have just shut it down entirely and postponed the game until another day entirely.
Yeah. Maybe when he saw the team kind of come out and just kind of go through the motions for the first 7 seconds. Nope. We've seen this before.
Is there something where you can just make flames shoot out of the shot clock and force an evacuation scenario?
Okay, so Al Durham gets the game ball.
We really have to, and it's funny, we haven't really talked a lot about Juwan, so I'm not giving him the game ball, but I see Ryan is fighting the good fight on Twitter to try to defend himself about some negative comments that he made about Juwan's defense that has forced him to be attacked by a number of people on Twitter. Juwan, if there were two guys who showed the fight, one of them was Juwan. Yes. I thought he was victimized by the amount of minutes that he had to play in a tough scenario. And the one thing that you really see, this was pretty evident again in some of those clips of that Jordan Sperber video, is just how much ground that big guys playing against Michigan really have to cover to both come up, defend ball screens, recover, do all the things that you have to do. It really takes a toll on anyone playing a good chunk of the game, let alone somebody who's asked to shoulder such a load offensively as he did. So not giving him a pass, there were a number of breakdowns defensively in the way that coverages were handled, at least based on my interpretation of what was supposed to happen. So I don't think he gets a pass from that, but I also don't want to portray it as if he didn't have a reasonably good game, because the stats that you talked about earlier are impressive. And he was the only guy in double figures, only guy scoring, only guy in double figures rebounding, the only guy on the team that blocked the shot, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. And no, he did. I mean, he did a lot of stuff.
And actually led the team in assists because they only had 4 and he had 2 of them. So
did he have 2 of them? I thought he had no assists.
Oh, no, he had no assists. I'm sorry. I was looking at Finney on the line above him. So, all right. Well, whatever. Close enough. So I don't want his performance to go as if it was not appreciated at all, because this would have been worse, certainly, if he did it. But
yes,
I just thought Al felt like, for that stretch when the game got away from IU, the only guy who really seemed to step forward and try to fight back. And so here we are handing a game ball to a guy that went 1 of 7 from the floor. So maybe it's a game ball with a knife sticking out of it that we use to deflate said game ball, but I would still give it to Al if we are truly forcing ourselves to give it to someone, which I feel like we should do. If you're going to be forced to give a banner moment after watching this game, we certainly can hand out a game ball to somebody.
Hey, and look, we're not forced to do it. That's how we choose to structure the show, and I believe it's the best way to do it, because even in the darkest of games, there's something that stood out. And look, like I'm not saying this season is not over. I mean, this team can still, what? Let me not strain all of our credulity on this night and start projecting forward how many games we can win. Let's just win 1. But the point I want to make is, the season is not over. But at some point, you do start looking toward the future when you're in the midst of a 6-game losing streak and things are going really badly. And Al is one of the bedrock players that, the Archie Miller Foundation is being built on. Archie didn't recruit him, but, he's going to be his coach for all of his time here. And, I think he's showing some growth. Like, that's at least one thing coming out of this. And, you've said it, we probably said it 4 times already on the show. When the game was in that early part, when it was completely lost, Al was the one guy that stepped up and fought. So I agree. The game ball isn't always to the best player on the court. I mean, Juwan was the best overall and most productive player on the court. There's no question about that. It's just the context and the timing. Like when it would have been nice to see him step up and be doing everything right and make a play and put his foot down and say, this isn't going to happen. He wasn't able to do that. And Al was the one guy who kind of put up some resistance to the avalanche that happened at first. And so that's why we give him our game ball. Again, it's not always the best player, but it's, for this game, who had the most important contribution. And I thought that was Al early on.
And quite frankly, that is a somewhat sad commentary on the game when the things that he did made him stand out so much more than everybody else. Which
those are things you should have five guys doing that you take for granted.
Right. Yet the absence of those things from everybody else is what made his performance seem so great, which is, somewhat damning in and of itself. But that's where we were.
All right. So today's Friday. When do we play Rutgers?
Wednesday.
Play Rutgers on Wednesday.
I believe it's Wednesday.
So,
well, the only thing that could make this show any worse is a really in-depth Rutgers preview.
No.
Just what everybody's asking for.
No,
I have no desire to give that.
No, we're not going to do it. But we sure as heck better win that game because Michigan State's coming next. We're not going on the road and beating Michigan State. Not even I can talk myself into that one. So, we can either beat Rutgers and then go to Michigan State and, be 4-7 after that, or be 3-8 with 8 straight losses. I mean, it makes the Rutgers game extremely important, just like this game was. We're trying to salvage something of this season. If this team can find something, there are winnable games down the stretch. The problem now is you've just dug yourself such a ginormous hole, and you might have shot your confidence so far that this quote-unquote winnable schedule isn't going to make a bit of difference. So, I wrote a whole post on the blog today about a reasonable path to 10 victories, but I thought it all hinged on winning tonight, like showing fight, showing something different from what we had done before, and we haven't. So I'm going to delete that post. I'm not, because I wouldn't do that, but I look at it with shame now. But we just got to find a way to get one win. So that's where we're at. The KenPom numbers updated. Indiana now 45th. Indiana, after we beat Marquette, was 16th in KenPom. We are now 45th, 68th offensively in the country.
Ugh.
Not good. Our 3-point percentage. Remember how for a while our 3-point percentage was like really good, and we were like up in the top 100. It's now 252nd. So I guess water has found its level.
Got any more sunshine over there, fella?
No.
You got any more you want to?
I don't. Oh, man. Holy moly.
Yeah. All right. Well,
you're listening to the Assembly Call IU postgame show. Remember that because you're an Assembly Call listener, you get 15% off your entire order at HoosierProud.com and HomefieldApparel.com. So if you want officially licensed IU gear, go to HomefieldApparel.com. And if you want one of our Assembly Call logo t-shirts or one of Hoosier Proud's unique Indiana-inspired designs, visit HoosierProud.com. On both sites, use the promo code ASSEMBLY at checkout for 15% off your entire order. That's promo code ASSEMBLY for 15% off your entire order. Andy, one more thing before last call.
I do want to circle back to Romeo a little bit.
Okay.
I don't know that we talked about him a lot, and I know you talked about he's a freshman. This is a difficult situation. This has been a really rough stretch for him. That's understating it by quite a lot. It was frustrating to see him come out the way that he came out. One of the fouls was questionable. The other one was silly. The second one and the third one, I give Michigan a lot of credit for him putting him in the position to make those plays. But I felt like for the most part, Charles Matthews deserves a ton of credit. He's an elite defender and made things really difficult on a guy who has not yet proven that he can really make tough long-range jump shots. But I thought Romeo's shot selection and decision-making over the course of the game was probably such that it doesn't get a free pass. I don't know what you want to say, but it was, I really thought his mindset, albeit for a freshman, did not help matters. And like you said, and we've talked about earlier, I felt like, and have started to feel a little bit this way these last couple of games, the offense is really bogging down with some of the ways that they're trying to get him the ball and some of the ways that he's trying to get shots that end up in either 4 shots by him and a bunch of guys standing around. Some of that spacing and just not having guys that can really space the floor. But I don't think not that we didn't give a little bit of constructive criticism earlier, but I don't think he's immune to what this team had, and him being on the bench so long in the first half took away an offensive option that this team desperately needed during that stretch. So I didn't want to, so there's some of these guys I think we take for granted and don't talk about a lot because their performances were a little bit more obvious. but it's been a struggle for him, and it's growing pains. And Archie talked about it after the last game. He's a bounce back guy. You didn't really see that tonight, and it's probably hitting the freshman wall a little bit and trying to figure out those things and how he can, effectively score now that there's a better scouting report on him, and trying to figure out how to do things that in a way that you've never been forced to do before. So it's not that it isn't understandable, but I thought there were a lot of shots in the second half that were really forced.
Yeah. And, look, he looked frustrated at times tonight too. There was one time in the huddle that I don't know who he was talking to, but he looked really frustrated. And I don't know if it was someone didn't, pass it to him, or if he was just generally frustrated at what was going on. Look, I mean, let's be realistic about this. I mean, Romeo's going to be in Bloomington for 1 year. He obviously, I know that he wants to win games now, but he's obviously got an eye on, his draft stock and those things. And there were 24 scouts and GMs in attendance tonight. So, I'm sure he was pressing a little bit after he got off to the bad start, because he wanted to perform well for them, for his teammates, for everybody. And, when he starts pressing like that, it hasn't, we saw him just go off in the Maryland game at the end, and it was like, okay, sometimes when he just takes over, this is what can happen. But as the defenses have clamped down, and he's, I think he's even lost some confidence with his shot, and has shown a little bit of hesitation, not quite the smoothness and just the assertiveness when he's around the rim. Now those aren't going in, and he's really struggling to get anything going. So, I think with everything that's going on with this team, I think it's a very nuanced thing. I mean, I think when you have a player of his ability and the clear expectation that he's going to be in the NBA next year, you are trying to manage, showcasing him, and he's your best talent, so you're trying to put him in the best positions possible while also trying to have a functional offense with everybody else. And to this point, Indiana has not figured that out. Archie has not figured that out. The players have not figured that out. And that's why I think these last couple games, the offense at times has felt like it functions better when Romeo's off the court, which is ironic to say because he's the best offensive talent that Indiana has. But that's why basketball is the greatest team game that there is, because it's about the five guys functioning as one, not just individuals by themselves. And this team hasn't found any type of cohesion to make that work right now.
Hard to argue with that.
So, all right, well, that's going to be my last call then. I'm off the hook.
Oh, well, there you go.
No, I'm just kidding.
just replay that. It'll be fine.
Yeah. All right, Andy. Last call. Final thoughts on Indiana's sixth straight loss. Man.
I don't know what to say that we haven't said already, quite honestly. I think the biggest thing that was disappointing for me was the way the team came out in another game. And it feels as though we've said this for multiple games where your back's against the wall and this is how you come out. And then the same thing happens. It happened in Nebraska. It happened at Purdue. Northwestern was a better start and a worse finish. But for the most part, during these stretches where we talk about key games, how will this team respond? They simply haven't responded in a way that's put them in any kind of position to win the game. And that is and continues to be the most disappointing thing, the seeming lack of response. And the more times that they're unable to respond, you see that confidence, what little confidence there even was to start with, go away. It's so fleeting. It's so quick that this game felt like it was over from a fan perspective, at least, by the time that 17-0 run was done. And that is really hard to fathom at this point in the season. But again, I circle back to what you see with Michigan. Michigan is what IU needs to become from a leadership standpoint, from an identity standpoint. And it's interesting to look at how that team has really switched what their identity has been over the last couple of years with, Luke Yaklich. That's been really well publicized and what they've been able to do and how they've been able to transform defensively. But that was a team that really switched up its identity pretty quickly, albeit with some experienced players and some guys that really bought into what they wanted to do on the defensive end. But you look across the court and you see what you hope IU becomes, but you also see how far away they are from becoming that. And you'd like to think, as much as we've talked about, this team has a chance to really get momentum in February. I'm not sure that they're able to salvage it based on what we've seen so far. And tonight's game to me proved, one, how far IU has to go to get to the kind of team and the kind of program that everybody associated with it wants to be, as well as you said, the belief at this point that it's difficult to have faith. It's not that we won't show up and look at this, but just feels like you've been burned too many times by this team in these types of situations to really come at the next game, even against Rutgers, with any confidence at all. And hopefully it's as simple as seeing one shot go in and things start to snowball in the same way that things have snowballed going the other way. But it was an eye-opening game, I think, for a number of reasons tonight, and a really disappointing start to the game that at that point really invalidated anything that happened after the start, because to go out, that was really all that mattered. And in the parts that mattered, just weren't enough guys who had the fight, and that I'm not going to get beat. This isn't happening on my watch. And it's just hard to look at what you've seen these last few games in difficult spots and see it turning around. Doesn't mean it can't, because we've seen this team play well, but this team looks night and day like what they look like in that Marquette game. Just how far they've fallen in those statistics speaks exactly to that point.
You mentioned Michigan's kind of change of identity with Luke Yaklich, and we talked with Dylan Burkhart on Podcast on the Brink this week, and we kind of asked him about that, because a lot has been made about, Yaklich, like being this defensive guru and changing it, and Dylan's like, yeah, well, what also has made a difference is Xavier Simpson's an elite defensive player. Charles Matthews is an elite defensive player. Iggy Brzdakis is a good defensive player. John Teskey's a really good defensive player. So at the end of the day, you can have all of these great, ideas about what you want to do and strategies that you want to do, but you got to have the players. And you have to have the players that are elite at the things that you're going to be asking them to do. So, I want to make it clear, like, we've levied a lot of, negativity and criticism across the bow of the IU program tonight because a performance like this warrants it. But it's important to keep the big picture in mind. Like, I'm disappointed in certain things that Archie has done, and I would have liked to see this team obviously progress better than it had. But, if this team came out and just, they were so passionate at the beginning of the game, the players were playing so hard, but they just got bogged down by the fact that the stuff that they were running, wasn't working over the course of the game, and you could just tell that it was a complete X's and O's debacle. Well, I might say, boy, does this guy really know how to coach? But this team came out and was defeated before the ball was tipped. And what coach on earth has a system that's going to win when that's the case? And is that partly on him? Yes. But I just think that there is a massive disconnect between the players themselves and the coach and the players. And, I continue to think if you have a smart coach with a proven track record that has a great reputation, you give that guy time to build his program. This year, these last 6 games have been an utter disaster after a really promising start to the year. There is no other way to say it. But I'm not convinced that what we're seeing right now is indicative of what the future of this program is going to look like as you cycle out some players and bring in new players that Archie recruited and kind of handpicked, and that ostensibly will be better personality matches for him, because clearly the guys that are here, aren't, either individually or collectively. And if this kind of stuff is happening in year 4, then yeah, it's a no-brainer. But I just think we've got to, as fans, be willing to see the short term and the individual game and the micro moments for what they are without it completely obliterating our perspective about the big picture. And I still think, call me crazy, which I guess after a game like this, you might want to, but I still think the program itself is on a positive trajectory, even if this team isn't. And those two things can be different sometimes, especially for a coach early on trying to build the program in his way. It's not happening with this team. There are, outside of trying to, reflect back on the wins against Butler and Marquette and Louisville, which seemed like eons ago, there's not a whole lot of reason to believe that it will turn around for this team. But to me, there's still plenty of reasons to, if you don't want to say, like, I believe Archie is the guy, at least to say, you know what, this is bad, but I'm going to be patient and let this guy install what he wants to install before I render any final judgments. I think that's the most reasonable way that we can look at this. And as Armand Franklin said on Twitter earlier tonight, relax. I don't know that I necessarily agree. I think it was a good night for getting some, getting some frustration out. But maybe now we can all relax after after getting some of that out. That was the last call. Do you want to say anything else before we shut it down?
No, this is perfectly fine place to end.
All right,
we've said enough. We've said enough. Everybody, take a break for a few days. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah,
and
boys.
Just a basketball game.
Hey, you know what?
Not a good one, but just a basketball game.
It's another. I was kind of against these Friday games, but that is one nice thing. If you lose on a Friday, then you've got the rest of the weekend to just get away from it. You can totally tune out basketball if you want to, or you can just say, you know what? I'm just going to be a fan of Big Ten basketball and watch Michigan State and Purdue. Just enjoy watching this game, not for the impact on the standings and what it means for us, but just watch the game. So, thank you, Fox. I guess. That's all I got. I'm just trying to end it on a positive note. All right, let's get out of here. That'll do it for us on this edition of the Assembly Call IU Postgame Show. If you want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/assemblycall. You can also subscribe to our podcast by searching for Assembly Call wherever you listen to podcasts. And don't forget to go to assemblycall.com or text IU to 66866 to join our free email newsletter. Thank you for listening. We will be back to talk IU hoops again with you Monday for Banner Monday, and then after the Rutgers game. Till then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim. And go Hoosiers.
Thank everybody for coming out.
All right, I got to get out of here, folks. Thank you.
Oh, God. This stat's terrible. I think Josh Wilson tweeted this at us I don't know why he would do this to us. Gas away. Since the introduction of the 30-second shot clock, no teams averaged less than 4 made three-pointers per major conference game. After tonight, Indiana's at 4.1.
Everybody stinks and the world's awful.
Checks out. So, yeah, there's that. I couldn't shoehorn in another Christmas Vacation quote. I didn't want it to seem disingenuous that I was just making a shtick at this point to fit it in. I did look a little bit to see if one would apply, but
man, it's amazing how in so many, like, this season feels like a weird mashup between 2014 and 2017. Because like 2014, you just had the team that was so painful to watch offensively, with the one and done guy trying to mesh with the senior, and like the chemistry just seemed off all year. But then 2017, you had the early success. It's like, man, we're up to 16th. You're in the top 25. You're feeling good. And then it's like, boom, rug just pulled out from under you. Like 2014, they were just never really good. Mm-hmm. It's like a weird mashup. And, and it's because it's coming on the shows and saying the same things over and over again. It feels like
that's
a broken
what I feel
record.
Like. I think any losing streak is bound to be that way when you're just doing the same things over and over again. But yeah, it definitely feels like, how many different ways can you say this team can't shoot? There's no spacing. They need leadership. Other guys should play.
Yeah. Why did we start out so badly?
Yeah. How the hell did we get down by so much? Why was the sense of urgency only in place once you're down 15 points?
Man, like, what is that? How do you, it's so weird. They've kind of been like that all year, except for the Marquette game, of course, and they just jumped on them, which looks like the biggest outlier ever.
I don't, other than the team, other than feeling that the team just would not respond to it in any way, I don't know what stops you from, even once, like I said, once it's 5, at a minimum, once it's 8, just calling a timeout and just losing your shit and going nuts at these guys. I don't know what.
I don't know.
I honestly, it just makes you think that he believes they won't respond to that, but they didn't respond to what happened any better. So
yeah, I don't know. Like if you were to just say, like, Zach Osterman broke the story that like Indiana doesn't stretch before games, and this is why they come out poorly, because they don't warm up and they don't stretch. Oh, okay. Well, that actually makes some sense. Then once they get warmed up, they start playing a little bit better. Like that would kind of explain it. You'd be like, okay, well, now there's something that we can do. But to just game after game after game come out and be that lackadaisical, it defies explanation.
Yeah, that checks out. 4 turnovers in the first 7 possessions.
I mean, we were trying to
in a
do
row at
different
one
stuff
point.
offensively. Like you could tell they were trying to do different stuff, but it's like if you're just going to let people bump you off your cuts and bump you off where you want to dribble, and you're not going to set good screens, and weak passes, well, nothing that you call is going to work.
Yeah.
Like at some point, it's just man against man. If I'm going to be tougher than you and bump you off the spot, and you're going to let me, and you can't go where you want to go, then guess what? This play isn't going to work.
Yep.
We don't even need coach here to tell us that.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, all right.
I have a mad crush on Archie Miller, and I trust Archie. I agree with Jerod. Absolutely, Jerod. I think you're spot on there.
Good Lord. All right.
All right, let's go.
I think we're done.
It's completely ridiculous.
We are.
I'm going to go drink some beers with my wife.
This
is over.
I'm going to do the same thing. All right.
All right. Everybody have a good weekend.
Don't think about basketball.
Try to forget this ever happened. Enjoy time with your family.
Mm-hmm.
What are you going to do?
That's about it.
All
right, y'all.
Yeah, at least it's till Wednesday. I mean, you've got Banner Monday to do on Monday, but I've got till Wednesday before
Allegedly
to talk about this again. So
yeah,
seems good. A lot of time to work some things out. And Rutgers is pretty good defensively and just a train wreck on offense. So
that game is going to be ugly.
Watch this team, meet up with that. This is
it's going to be 39-37 or something like that.
Yeah.
Hey, fortunately,
this game may give rock fights a bad name, I fear.
Fortunately, Ryan will be on Banner Monday. Whenever he's not on a show, he has all these pent up takes, so I won't have to say much.
He's firing some of them off on. If I was him, I would have just not
take the night off, man.
Yeah,
why wasn't he here anyway? If he could be on Twitter,
I think he was
sending out hot takes.
Wasn't he hosting an afternoon? Wasn't he filling in on an afternoon radio show in San Diego?
Oh,
I think that's what it was.
It's still
so he
kind of
couldn't
early
watch
there.
the beginning and do
right.
whatever. But my God, I was.
He didn't need to watch the game to come on here and provide some hot takes.
Well, no kidding. Yeah, why are you engaging with people? I would have died not to talk about this game.
Yeah, I know he had an excuse. Stay away.
There's nothing that I wanted to do less than talk about this game, and he had every reason not to, and is out there arguing with people on Twitter about Juwan Morgan.
He can't. Also,
don't do this to yourself.
I saw him getting into an argument about somebody about how Steve Alford handled
and
the Pierre Pierce thing.
Yeah,
He cannot.
Why do this to yourself?
He's like Ryan.
Alford's behavior in that situation was despicable. Why argue with the person who believes otherwise? You're not changing that person's mind.
What is it? What's the term?
Enjoy your Friday night, for the love of God. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
What's the term in Back to the Future where if you a chicken, right? If you call Marty a chicken, he has to he can't back away, he's got to fight back. That's Ryan, man. If someone tries
there's a few buttons to push with him that are Archie may not be able to push the right buttons with this team quite yet, but everybody
Dean
knows
Spanos, Steve Alford,
Steve Alford, specifically the Pierre Pierce thing.
Yes,
I mean those are definitely the two. There are probably others if we really sat and talked longer about it, but those would definitely be the two. He just can't help himself. And
he used to kind of get like that about Will Sheehy early in the show. He had a particular frustration with Will Sheehy.
Yeah. Well, what are you gonna do? All right.
I don't know.
We really
that's what it is. Nobody calls me chicken. That's right.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. He can't even help himself. Poor guy had every reason not to discuss this game and to just remove himself from it, and couldn't do it.
I guess that's why he's the right person to have as a
couldn't
teammate on a postgame show.
Chose
for 8
not
years.
to. I don't know which, but
I know.
Either way. All
right. Cheers to everybody.
That's
Go have a beer.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us and helping us wallow in the misery that was this game. For those of you who joined us live.
Yes.
I'm not sure what it says about any of us that were involved that you were here, but we thank you nonetheless.
I'm gonna go rip my too small candy stripe pants off now so I can breathe again.
If you don't get a drop of yourself saying that, you're doing all of us a disservice. I'll just say that.
I do. By the way, I should mention this. I have been slowly accumulating some drops of myself. Just a spoonful of sugar makes the losses go down. Because we are going to take advantage of IU fans as much as we possibly can. I will follow this team through the pit of hell. Don't let him know that I have this, but I don't know when I said this, but Ryan is perfect. Ryan is perfect. Once a year, I just go to Zagreb's just at a giant table by myself. It's all going to unravel from here. Okay, that's it.
Yeah, that already
Let's
has.
go. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good weekend.
See you, everybody. I can do what LeBron can do. See you all.